So, RWBY theories have always been a fun discussion topic for the community, and also, some of them are pretty crazy. I figured it would be fun to take a look at some of the more off-the-wall theories we've seen. Some of these have been confirmed or denied by now, and some are still up in the air. So let's take a little stroll down theory lane and review some of RWBY's most popular theories. Something that's been debated in the fandom, even as far back as Volume 1, is the non-stop theorizing of the characters' parents' identities. Like, we've all heard the theory that Crow is actually RWBY's dad, even though this theory has been confirmed to not be true by the creators multiple times now. Some people still subscribe to it. And I really can't think of any reason as to why this would be a thing. I've heard the numerous concepts story-wise, which is, it would be more interesting for RWBY and Crow as characters. But what I mean is, how people started thinking this might have been a thing in the first place, which I'm guessing is just people have the same hair color as their parents. Looking at the rest of the parent characters in RWBY, it's really not that surprising people started raising eyebrows over the legitimacy of Ty being RWBY's dad. All the other characters are just younger versions of one or both of their parents, with the exception of Yang, who is a perfect combination of both of her parents for some reason. RWBY really has nothing in common with Ty, at all. Her hair color, hairstyle, eye color, eye shape, skin tone, literally nothing. But she does look a lot like Crow, but with the dark hair colors, pale skin tones, and their aesthetic choices of capes and scythes. Also, this theory really started to come to fruition after we finally met Crow in Volume 3. And back then, we really didn't have a very good look at what Summer actually looked like, because she was a goblin about taking her picture for some reason, turned to face the camera. Now we can tell RWBY is mostly just a clone of her mother. But this is not where those theories end. These theories have been floating around for years and continue to be made even today. And all of these theories just seem to stem from characters having the same eye color or hair color, mostly. Remember back when we were theorizing Cinder was RWBY's mom, just because they both had black hair? Then when RWBY finally actually met Cinder, people theorized that she had left RWBY when she was so young, so she couldn't really remember her. But deep down, she started to recognize her, and that's why RWBY hesitated in that moment. There was also the theory that Cinder was Blake's mom, again because of the black hair and yellow eyes. RWBY theories used to be so bad. There's other theories like that here and there still. Cinder, Raven, Junior, Adam, and any other character who features mainly red or black color palettes gets stuck with various "are you my real parent?" theories like that. Things like having the same accessory gets said a lot. There was questions about maybe Neo is Raven's daughter because they had the same necklace. It's no, they just copied the same necklace. The craziest one I saw was a theory that Jacques was Adam's secret dad because the blue eyes. Overall, the "are you my dad" theories are 5 out of 10. Some are neat, but mostly just don't make much sense. Usually they're better for fanfiction or AU purposes, rather than anything concrete for the real show. After we finally got some real information in Volume 6 about what the relics actually are, some theories started to pop up, specifically with the sword and the crown. Basically, if any character has a sword, it got theorized it was secretly the Relic of Destruction. However, the only one that ever actually seemed to hold any water to me was the theory that Jean's sword was actually the relic. Mostly because it has its blue and gold stylizing on its hilt, somewhat matching the blue and gold seen in the lamp. Also, since he's mentioned it's a really old antique that's been in his family for generations, the idea is it could have been passed on to his family from an old Ozma life. Then that's why Osmond was so chill with letting Jean join Beacon, even though he clearly wasn't actually ready for the challenge of being a huntsman. Definitely a fun theory, and not technically confirmed or denied yet. However, I do highly doubt this will become true. If it was a relic, I think Osmond would have brought it up by now. Also, the gold and blue on its hilt isn't quite the right colors as the one we've seen in the lamp. And the actual design of the hilt is shown to be much more ornate than the one Jean has on his sword. But the sword isn't the only relic that's gotten some crazy theories over its whereabouts. The hidden beacon relic, the Crown of Choice, has also gotten some attention. Specifically, I've seen 2 theories in particular. One is the theory that Glinda is, or at least has, the crown. The biggest thing that hints towards this theory being a thing is the fact that her symbol is a little tiara. And I think it's a bit of a stretch. And I definitely don't think she's some sort of humanoid representation of the crown just because of her symbol. However, if she secretly had the crown in her possession, and that was the reason Salem's forces couldn't find it after the fall of Beacon, I think that would be a totally very plausible and very cool option. Only time will tell, I guess. The other big crown theory I've heard is the idea that Pyrrha's headband thing was secretly the crown of choice. The idea is the gold coloring of it matches the lamp. Also, when Cinder killed her, that was the only part that didn't powder away. Was that because it was what Cinder was after, or because it was just too strong of an artifact for Cinder to destroy? I don't think this theory holds much water, though. Not only have we seen that the crown looks totally different from Pyrrha's headpiece, but I'm also pretty sure it didn't vanish with the rest of her armor just for stylistic purposes. Of the two, I definitely think the idea that Glinda has the crown in her possession holds a lot more water than the Pyrrha thing. Relic theories land as a solid 7 out of 10 for me. They're usually a lot more thought out and fun than most theories nowadays. After we learned about the existence of maidens, the internet immediately went into overdrive, trying to theorize who any of the maidens could be. I guess just assuming it would be someone we've already met. Most theories boil down to things like Winter must be the Winter Maiden because her name is Winter, and now it's Summer has to be the Summer Maiden because, you know, her name is Summer. Beyond that very basic line of thinking, there's really nothing to imply anyone would actually be a better idea for a maiden reveal between the different characters. I'm assuming this idea keeps getting brought up since Cinder's last name is Fall, and she's the Fall Maiden. Even though, seemingly, she just picked that name on her own accord, at least that's what Raven has implied. Another big element of these kinds of theories mostly relies on the idea that the Summer Maiden would end up being someone we've already met. After all, Freya was introduced in the same volume we found out she was the Maiden, so it's not unreasonable to think that the Summer Maiden might follow suit. The only character we've already met who could be a good fit for the role would be Glinda. There's a lot of speculation over why Glinda wasn't chosen to be the next Fall Maiden before Pyrrha. We could theorize she was just a little too old for the role of Maiden, or maybe she just turned down the offer, but there is this idea that she's already the Summer Maiden, and she isn't able to have multiple Maiden powers. It's not a terrible theory, and I would be okay if this turned out to be true once we finally do meet our Summer Maiden. Half of this theory is flimsy, but there is something worth pondering here. 6 out of 10. So I don't know if you noticed, but there are 4 maidens, and there are also 4 members to Team RWBY. So of course, people immediately started theorizing our titular team would eventually attain the 4 different maiden powers themselves. I find this concept to be pretty meh. It just feels kind of basic or boring to conveniently allocate our superpowers amongst the one team of heroes. Like, we can't at least give Nora a little love? On top of that, RWBY is already overpowered with her silver eyes, and I think our main cast can be interesting and integral to the plot without just forcing them to become maidens. There's a second element to this theory, however. It's trying to figure out which maiden the different girls would become. This mostly just boils down to fighting the stereotypes between the girls and the seasons in question. Generally, I've seen Yang gets to be Summer because Summer is hot and Yang does the hot things, and Weiss gets to be Winter because Winter is cold and Weiss does the cold stuff. It gets a little tricky when looking at Ruby and Blake. Due to their blacks and reds, they both feel like they would be a good fit for fall. Of the two, I would give Blake the Fall Maiden powers, since Black fits fall a lot better, and we first met her in Forever Fall back in the Black trailer. And while it's a bit of a stretch, Ruby's last name is Rose, and roses bloom in the spring, so I guess that's the best fit we can find for the Spring Maiden. However, since we've actually met 3 of these maidens, it sort of rearranges my mindset around a bit. Since Raven is the Spring Maiden, I actually think the best out of RWBY to get those powers would be Yang. It wouldn't be unreasonable to think Raven's last thoughts when she dies would be of her own daughter. Cinder is the Fall Maiden, and the only way I can think a member of Team RWBY would be able to get the maiden powers from her would be if they were the last one to fight her. That same thing that happened with Amber. The last thoughts of the victim being of their attacker. However, I think it's more likely Cinder's last thoughts would be of one of her subordinates, Neo or Emerald. Of these two, I think it would be a lot more interesting if Emerald became the Fall Maiden. Emerald has become rather meek in recent volumes. She second-guesses herself a lot and is clearly very conflicted on her stance in Salem's council. If the one person she looked up to more than anyone else suddenly died and gave her all of the power and responsibility she had before, it could lead to some really interesting development for Emerald. Hell, I even thought this had already happened. After Cinder fell from her fight with Raven, I theorized she might have died on impact, and Emerald was the last person in her thoughts. And Emerald's big freakout at the end was hiding her getting the Maiden powers transferred to her. However, I was, of course, very wrong. And for the Winter Maiden, I could only think of two people who would be the last ones in Penny's thoughts. Either her dad, Pietro, meaning the Maiden powers would go somewhere random, or if we're sticking to just Team RWBY, RWBY herself, Penny's best friend. While we're on the Winter Maiden, a more recent theory floating around was the idea of who would get the Maiden powers from Freya. It was pretty apparent she was going to die before the end of the volume, but not everyone thought Winter would get the powers cut and dry. A lot of people correctly thought it was going to go to Penny to prove Penny is a real girl to fit her Pinocchio inspiration. Some people thought it might go to Nora. We thought she might have been distantly related to Freya. They have similar hairstyles and eye colors after all. Maybe Nora was some long-lost granddaughter, and Freya's last thoughts would be of that child she seemingly lost long ago. On top of that, if you know Norse mythology, Nora's fairy tale inspiration is Thor, and his mother is named Freya. Freya? I thought this theory really had legs to stand on, but I ended up being wrong. Another big theory was that it would be Neo who got the powers, because ice cream is cold, I guess. And apparently Neo made a joke in RWBY Chibi saying she was the Winter Maiden or something. I don't know, I don't watch that show, it's fucking boring. Personally, I thought Winter might actually get the powers, but then end up getting killed by Cinder and her forces, so that the powers would then quickly jump to Weiss. It would make sense then why Weiss got to see Freya before. We were setting up the idea of this power being transferred to her. I liked this idea because, as it is, once a person gets their Maiden powers, they seemingly become invincible due to plot armor. It would have been neat if we subverted these expectations, and after Winter seemingly wins by getting her powers, she still gets killed. No one would have seen it coming. While I don't really agree with most of these theories, this topic is at least one of the most fun theories to think about, and I love hearing different people's concepts. 9 out of 10.
Intruder, identify yourself.
Blake, she's a Faunus. But what about Ruby? She's a Faunus. Yang, she's a Faunus. Team Juniper, Faunuses. Everyone's a Faunus, except for Weiss, because she used to be racist. Yes, this theory, which has spawned countless fan arts, is the idea that the rest of our main cast can secretly all be Faunuses. You can find various theories for everyone under this category, but I'm just gonna narrow it down to 3. RWBY is secretly a wolf Faunus. This theory actually had better legs to stand on when this was the only shot of Summer we had. Why are you fucking hiding from the camera? This is a class photo with your team. Get your hood out of your face. The theory was basically Summer was hiding either wolf ears or a wolf tail underneath that big-ass hood of hers. And then RWBY was secretly a wolf too. This might have spawned during a Q&A panel where Monty revealed that they had considered giving RWBY gray hair to feel more wolf-like, but opted against it. But why would they have considered it in the first place if she wasn't supposed to be a wolf Faunus from the beginning? Now, you might notice the very obvious lack of ears or tails on RWBY. The theory goes on to say that after RWBY was born, Ty and Summer cut off her tail to hide her Faunus nature so she wouldn't be discriminated against. But that's fucking crazy? Similarly, we have her sister, Yang, who's been theorized to secretly be a dragon Faunus. This theory really hinges on the idea that you could have a Faunus trait of an animal that's not actually in the wild. So the idea is Ty is secretly a dragon Faunus, hence the dragons, and Yang has her fiery semblance because she secretly has, dragon breath or something. Her name even translates to sunny little dragon. The last one I've seen, and this is sort of recent, is the idea that Cinder was secretly a mouse Faunus. In her flashback, her little pigtails definitely invoke the idea of mouse ears. Similar to RWBY, the theory is her tail was cut off when she was very little, so she could look human. I really hate most of these I'm a secretly a Faunus theory, because it would be really dumb to introduce one of our main characters was secretly a completely different race. After 8 years of the show's runtime, it just feels silly, right? However, critical as I may be, I have to admit, I was also in this camp at one point in time. Travel back in time with me to Volume 2. To end this video, I figured I would share with you guys one of my own crazy RWBY theories. This one involves Team Coffee. My theory is... Okay, so... The theory started when I realized the White Fang Lieutenant, dubbed by the fans as Banesaw, has pretty similar stature and hair as Yatsuhashi. I wasn't the only one who noticed this either, and during their fight with Mercury and Emerald, he gets a scratch on his armor, and it looks like it's white in there, so my theory was Yatsuhashi was secretly Banesaw. But what animal would he be? We never saw Banesaw's animal trait either, but I had my theories. I figured if Yatsuhashi was secretly in the White Fang, maybe that meant the entire team was secretly in it too. I thought it could have been a cool element to the story if the characters we had come to enjoy turned out to be double-crossers, especially such strong opponents too. My theory was, for Yatsuhashi, was that he was a turtle Faunus. His green armor reminds me of a turtle shell, and during the fight with Mercury, his head lands over a geyser. However, he stands up, seemingly only slightly stunned by it, no real damage to be seen. I theorized Yatsuhashi had the ability to, retract his head in to avoid the hit, like how turtles go into their shells. As a part of this theory, I thought he and Velvet would combine to make the tortoise and the hare. However, we obviously know none of this was true. Furthermore, Velvet's fairy tale is very clearly the Velveteen rabbit. It's apparent not only by her Faunus trait and her first name of Velvet, and her last name Scarlatina, referencing the Scarlet Plague from the story. On top of that, we recently met the real character from The Tortoise and the Hare, Harriet, and she even references who was probably her tortoise counterpart.
Like marrow replaced Tortuga.
Tortuga is Spanish for tortoise, so it's pretty safe to say he's not only dead, but he's also not Yatsuhashi. Now, if you thought that might have been a stretch, just you wait until you hear what my reasons were for Coco and Fox. I thought their fairy tale could have been The Fox and the Hound, because, his name is Fox, and Coco is a horn dog. I assumed Fox might have retractable claws or something, kind of like Tuxin. I guess, now in hindsight, someone naming their fox son Fox is kind of stupid, isn't it? That'd be like if Blake's name was Cat. Hi, my name is Monkey. And the theory was that Coco was using her beret to hide her little dog ears. Back in Volume 2, I was much more under the impression that Faunus would regularly try to hide their Faunus traits with, clothing and accessories. I guess Blake was the only weirdo doing that shit. Don't worry, this paper-thin theory has more evidence to it. Remember, I said not only were they all secretly Faunus, but they're also all secretly in the White Fang. Well, what proof do I have? Well, Volume 2! So in Volume 2, Weist and Yang get tasked to design the dance because Team Coffee, who were originally supposed to put it together, were still out on their mission to Mountain Glen. Later, as Team RWBY are getting ready to depart with Oobleck, Team Coffee come back, where Velvet warns Team RWBY to be careful because the Grimm was just so much. After all, it took Coffee several weeks longer than planned to finish their mission. And yet, when Team RWBY arrive on the scene, they seem to handle the Grimm with ease. Yeah, they're a little tired, but they're still plowing through hordes of Beowulfs in droves. Hell, RWBY herself faced more Beowulfs by herself in her red trailer. Oobleck isn't even really helping the girls either. This hardly seems like the monumental threat Velvet made it out to be. But then, when the Grimm crash through the train into Vale, Team Coffee show up to help, and then they wreck shop. Each member of Team Coffee take out several very large Grimm and hordes of small Grimm on their own, with seemingly very little effort. So they've gone from struggling with the Grimm in Mountain Glen to now they're just turning around and showing everyone up easily? It got me thinking. RWBY found a secret White Fang operation base underground at Mountain Glen. What if Team Coffee were all secretly Faunus and were all secretly working with the White Fang to help get everything set up for their attack on Vale? That would explain why they took so long on their mission, yet also easily defeated all the Grimm from the attack. They were never really a threat for them in the first place. And second years don't need to bring a huntsman with them on their missions, so they could go to Mountain Glen without anyone finding out. It just so happens they came back from Mountain Glen just before another team and a professional huntsman were about to arrive on the location. So Team Coffee came back just before RWBY departed, so they wouldn't catch on to their plans. Genius! I truly did believe all of this, and I held on to this theory for quite a while. I even thought maybe Coco and Yatsuhashi lost their tournament fight because they needed Mercury to get to the singles rounds. But it quickly became apparent that wasn't the case. And now it's very obvious my theory was completely wrong. But even though I was wrong, I still had a lot of fun with this. And it's been fun getting back into that headspace to tell you guys about it. So I guess I would rank this theory 3 out of 10. I mean, come on. Everyone's Faunus theories tend to be really basic and usually don't make much sense. Just because I enjoy them, that doesn't make them good. But it's been fun taking a look back at RWBY's wackier side of the fandom. Maybe I'll make a follow-up video to this sometime. Anyway, if you're still jonesing for more RWBY theories, you can head on over to my recent podcast with Twins Inc. and Allison RU, where we discussed more theories specifically from Volume 8. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you had a lot of fun with it. I sure did. Shout out to my $10 patrons. You're all amazing. Nako, Michael, James Dodds, Cool Duck, Andrew, Ramiel, Valhalla Knight, Chamomile, G Extreme, Classy Critic, Surge, Dakota D, Taj, and the Boulder Off Bros. You're all amazing. Thank you all so much. Yeah, I hope you had fun with this video. I had a lot of fun. It's fun going down memory lane and thinking about like the crazy RWBY theories. And if you have any wacky RWBY theories, I would love to hear them. What did you guys think of my coffee is secretly in the White Fang RWBY theory? I mean it. I really did think for a good long while that might have water, like, but nope. So yeah, any and all thoughts and opinions? Do you believe any of these? I know a lot of you probably still think that Crow is RWBY's dad theory. Like, I told my boyfriend about it, and even as I was telling him, like, no, it's been confirmed, it's not real, he's like, but is it? So yeah, any and all thoughts and comments, leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.